Hey folks, John here, Old Hickory Forge. Welcome back. If it's your first time here, welcome. So what's going on today, I'm down here in the workshop. If you've seen my last couple of videos, you know I've been using stuff out of the scrap pile more and more just to try to get it used up. So what I got here is a piece of an old sawmill blade. I think it's a crosscut saw blade, something of the sort. And what I got here are pieces of an old bandsaw mill blade. I've already checked both of these. I know they're hardenable steels. Sometimes with sawmill blades of both kinds, you'll have carbide teeth brazed onto a mild steel body. Usually you can tell just by looking at it, but if you can't because it's too rusted, you can just quench it and see if it hardens. So what I got here, I got a billet, 16 layers of our bandsaw blade and our sawmill blade. Now, the surfaces of both of these steels are pitted pretty severely. I don't know if you can see or not, but I ground them clean. But to grind through enough to get all that crap out of all those pores, or not pores, pits in the steel, you're basically something this thin's going to be gone. So what I've done, I've cleaned it up the best I can. I've tacked it together, and I've had this thing soaking in a bath of denatured alcohol and borax for about 22 hours now. You know, hopefully that's gotten it clean-ish. So we got 16 layers to start with. I'm going to forge weld this baby solid, grind all these seams and crap off to get an idea how much material we're working with, and then go from there. I'll see what happens. So, quick word on doing Damascus by hand. As you can see the way I've stacked up my billet, it's tall, it's narrow, and it's short. The reason for that is if you start with a long, skinny, wide billet, by the time you get all the way up and down to get that weld set, you're going to have lost heat and you're going to end up getting inclusions. So, your billet needs to be narrower than the face of your hammer so you're contacting the whole thing at once. And you should be able to get up and down the entire length of this hammer, or this billet, with your hammer, with no more than 4 or 5 blows. So we'll get the forge welding done and then we'll start drawing this thing out and see what we got. The other thing, you want to go ahead and get your flux on before your billet scales up too bad. So about a black heat, maybe a dull red is where you want to go ahead and get it done. See how the surface of the steel is starting to bubble like that? It means we're getting to welding heat. The sun is hitting the forge right now, so it looks colder than it actually is, but that's a good way to tell. So, like I said, quick taps up and down the billet. Give it the old brush. Give it the old flux. Back in the fire we go. Second weld, here we go. A little more force. So, this is after 3 welding passes. It's behaving as one piece of steel now. You learn to kind of feel when a forge weld sticks, and there's no doubt in my mind that's stuck. And I was going to grind the teeth off of those bandsaw blade pieces before I kept going, but they look to be just kind of disappearing as I forge this thing down. So I'm going to take it and run with it and start drawing this guy out. So, when you're drawing out the big stock like this by hand, the horn of the anvil is your friend. Give it a few good stiff blows, see how much material will move. We're going to turn it over, move up a little bit. Just keep bringing that puppy out. So this is after a couple of passes over the horn. You see we've thinned the billet down a good bit, but now it's just a little bit too wide for us to really hammer on comfortably for the next weld. So we're going to hold on here, we're going to work the seams in, make the billet narrower, and then we'll flatten it up and cut and fold this baby. So I forgot to film, but I did one pass drawing out over the horn to get some length pretty quick, and now I'm just trying to square everything back up. If your welds hold together when you hammer on the seams like this, you can be pretty confident that they're solid. So now I'm just going to brush this thing as clean as I can. And then go at it with a top tool called a flatter to get a nice flat surface for the cut and fold. So now on the opposite side of the one we just went over with the flatter, we're going to mark about halfway. And then we'll cut about 3/4 of the way through the billet so we can bend it over. So then we'll go back to the side that we flattened. Brush it clean real good. Flux it real good. And and then basically just fold it over on itself. And we'll forge weld all that together and draw it back out. What this does is increases the layer count of our billet. We started with 16. After this, we'll have 32. I'll probably do 2 more of these, take it to like 120 something before I call it good. So my handle broke off and I decided to clean up the back side of the billet to weld on a new one, which gives us a chance to look at our material, and it's looking pretty good. I do think I'm going to stop here though at 64 layers instead of doing another fold, because I've already lost about half of my material to scale. So rather than cut and fold it again, I think I'm just going to go ahead, drill some holes on the surface and make some raindrop Damascus and go from there. So I went to go drill the holes in this billet to make the raindrop pattern. Basically the way you do that is you drill, shallow holes all up and down the billet, and then when you forge it out flat, it creates the raindrop pattern. But my drill bit wouldn't cut it, and I'm using a brand new Cobalt drill bit. It's good and sharp. I've only used it like once. So what I did was I thermal cycled this thing a few times to see if, it had air hardened, maybe I could soften it. And then I tried a smaller, another brand new drill bit, and it still wouldn't cut it. So I took a file to it, and listen to this. It's hard. It's not like as hard as a knife would be coming out of the quench, but it's definitely a lot harder than a soft piece of steel out of the forge should be. So that's just kind of interesting. I don't know what kind of steel either of those saw blades were, but not entirely sure what to do with this next. I'll either cut some grooves into it with a grinding disc and then forge it out flat and make something like ladder Damascus, or just go with what I've got. But how crazy is that? So what I ended up doing was just cutting about a quarter of the way through with a grinding disc on both sides at about 45 degrees. I'm going to call it slant ladder Damascus. I don't know if it's a thing or not, but let's forge this thing flat and see what happens. So like I said at the start of the video, I don't really know what either of these steels that I made this billet out of are. I've been told the bandsaw mill blades are 15 and 20, and we did get a pretty good contrast just after one 10-minute etching cycle, so that leads me to believe they're something along those lines. But we ended up with a billet about 4 inches long by about 3/8 of an inch thick by about 1.5 inches wide. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to use it for April's charity build. So if you got suggestions for what kind of knife you'd like to see made with a billet this size, or anything else you'd like to see done with it, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Charity we're going to be donating to is going to be St. Jude's Children's Hospital, I believe. But that's that. Scrap pile Damascus, done by hand. So if you like what you saw, like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Always more cool stuff coming. Links to the social media if you want to follow me, and the Etsy and Patreon if you want to help support the channel or purchase some of my work in the description below. That's all I got for you. Y'all take care.